Welcome to the Mind Myself podcast. I'm Esther, and it is my pleasure to be bringing you information about healthcare approaches, health issues, and people's health journey stories, all from the complementary, holistic, and integrative perspectives, helping you become your own best health advocate and helping you make your own informed choices because you matter. Welcome to Mind Myself's podcast. We have an exciting topic today, fertility over 40. And I'm so pleased to introduce to you our guest, Eva Reed. Thank you for being here, Eva.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about your credentials just to get us started, and then let's dive right into some questions.
Sure, I'd love to. So I'm a holistic nutritionist. So I focus on food, nutrition, lifestyle, supplementation, and mindset. My credentials are, I'm a registered holistic nutritionist. So I'm a graduate of the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition. And I focus on fertility, on pregnancy, and postpartum clients. So mostly female fertility and reproductive health.
Excellent. Now, I understand you have a disclaimer that you want to say because it's really important that we mention that.
Yes, so I just wanted to clarify, I'm a nutritionist and not a physician. So the information you're about to hear is for informational purposes only. It's for education, and it's not intended to diagnose, cure, or treat, and it's not a substitute for the advice provided by your healthcare provider. So we always recommend to consult with your doctor before making any changes to your health.
Excellent. And you will see that disclaimer below this podcast as well. So we just want to be really clear. Well, let's dive right in. What's age got to do with it? I like the question. And how does being over 40 affect our fertility?
Yes, well, so age can be a touchy subject for women in general at any age. But I feel like it can be especially true when we're talking to women over 40 and fertility, because there's so much stigma around this about having children later in life. But if you are a woman in this age group who's trying to conceive, I believe it's important to have these difficult conversations, because it's this kind of knowledge. In this case, knowledge really is power. And the more that you know, the more you know sort of what you can do versus what you can't do about the situation. And the reality is that age is a big factor. So women reach the peak of peak of fertility at around age 24. So after that, our egg quality starts to slowly deteriorate, and around 37, until around 37, and then after that it deteriorates rapidly, or I should say more rapidly, until about 45. So at that point, it's still possible, of course, to get pregnant, but can be challenging. So the number of eggs, so our egg reserve will also decrease as we get older. So essentially the remaining eggs that we do have are more likely to have abnormal chromosomes, which can make carrying to term a challenge, not to mention there's a higher risk of birth defects. We may also not ovulate every week, also known as anovulation. And when we do ovulate, there's a chance that we might release more than one egg, which there's actually a higher risk of multiples in older women who have children. And a lot of people say, oh, they must have had IVF. No, a lot of women conceive naturally, but have multiples because they've had children later in life. And also, as we age, we have higher risk of disorders that can affect fertility, like endometriosis, uterine fibroids. And then I'm not even going to talk about like the risks during pregnancy itself. And I should make it clear, like I'm not saying all this to scare our listeners or discourage them from trying to conceive. I know these can be scary facts, but it's the opposite. I say this to encourage women to get all the facts, to not shy away from the numbers, because the more they know what they have control over. And they can focus their efforts on those things, because there are definitely things that you can do. There are things that you have control over and ways that you can support your body to give it its best chance of conceiving a healthy baby.
Just a quick point of clarity. You said the eggs are released every week. Is it every week?
Sorry?
You said that the eggs are released every week. Is it every
week?
week?
Sorry. I meant every month. My apologies.
Excellent. So just to clarify that. No problem. So, and what are some of the things that negatively affect fertility that diet could help with, since you're a holistic nutritionist?
Yeah, for sure. So there are many things, and there are many reasons why women might have trouble conceiving. I'm not going to list all of them. It's a long list, but the areas where diet can help are hormone rebalancing. So that's a big one. So hormones like estrogen, progesterone, our thyroid hormones like TSH, T4, T3, also FSH, LH, so follicle stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, cortisol, like all of this plays a big part, integral role in fertility in general. And when any of these are off balance, issues with conception can result from irregular periods and an ovulation to other things. And the good news is that our bodies generally, when it comes to hormones, our bodies want to move it towards balance. So we can help that process along with diet and lifestyle that supports our all of our hormones, our endocrine system. So in fertility, that's especially our hypothalamus, our pituitary, our thyroid, our adrenals, our ovaries. And in terms of the specific protocols, I can't really go into that right now because it depends on what hormones are out of balance. But there are lots of ways that that nutrition can help with that. And before I move on to the next thing, I also just want to add though that because of the age group, if there are hormones that look like they might be off balance, it's extra important to talk to your doctor because it may not just be a sign of it's fertility problems. It could be early menopause. So you don't always necessarily want to jump to, okay, let's balance my hormones because it's infertility. Another one, a big one, is digestion. So digestive imbalances are so rooted to a lot of issues in terms of health, including fertility. Like there are studies that say, digestion is sort of, or indigestion is a root cause for a lot of things. So, but even if you kind of think logically about, if you're not digesting, then you're not absorbing the nutrients that you need to make your reproductive system function. So even from that perspective, also gut bacteria. So when levels of our good bugs are low, it can lead to inflammatory disease and conditions that impact fertility due to the inflammation, like endometriosis, PCOS, uterine fibroids, other autoimmune conditions. So just helping support our digestive is a big one. Egg health is another. So big way that we can help our fertility is supporting egg health. And connected to this are even some studies that show that supporting your egg health can improve success rates of IVF too. So I won't get too deep into that right now, but yeah, egg health is a big one. Immune system. So there's lots of studies that connect immune system issues with infertility. So just supporting a diet that supports the immune system can help. And sugar balance. So again, there are lots of conditions in which there is an issue with insulin that can lead to other hormone issues. So supporting sugar balance through diet can really help. And just generally, there are protocols that can help manage conditions like PCOS and endometriosis that again affect fertility. So lots and lots that you can do. And I feel like I'm just scratching the top of the iceberg here, but there are lots of solutions.
For sure. And for clarity, what is PCOS?
Polycystic ovarian syndrome. Thank you for asking.
Yes. And IVF is?
And you know what? I don't actually remember what it stands for. I don't remember what it stands for. That's terrible.
Describe what it is specifically that people, so they have an understanding of it.
So it's a reproductive technology where an embryo is taken from the ovary, artificially inseminated, and then put back into the uterus.
Awesome. Okay, that's a wonderful, simple explanation. And realizing that everybody is an individual, what specific kind of dietary changes do you recommend for women over 40 who are trying to conceive?
Yeah, and thank you for saying it will vary from individual, because that's something that's important to mention. Everybody is different, so there's not sort of one diet that fits all. But some guiding principles are definitely starting with cleaning up the diet. So that includes doing a kitchen and pantry audit, removing all processed foods, your candies, your chips, fast food, packaged goods, that kind of stuff. Removing processed sugar, high fructose corn syrup, artificial sweeteners, natural flavors, trans fats. I mean, this is a long list, I know, and all of these affect our health and fertility in different ways, but cleaning things up. As a general rule, I always say if it comes in a box and has more than a handful of ingredients is probably not going to serve you. So cleaning that up and then restocking. So replacing those foods with quality whole foods, fresh fruits and vegetables, whole grains, pulses, nuts and seeds, fish, eggs. Some meats are also beneficial. Going organic if you can, again, going back to sort of the quality aspect, which I know is not always possible for all people. So I always say if you can't go all organic, I recommend follow the Dirty Dozen Clean 15 list from EWG. Our website has a really good list and they update it every year. Don't try for perfection, but try to eat a whole food diet at least 80% of the time, focusing on ingredients rather than ready to eat meals. So that's number one. Number two, reducing caffeine intake. So they're caffeine and alcohol. So there's connections to both in terms of how they negatively affect our fertility. I don't think you need to completely, if you are a coffee drinker, completely remove coffee, but the recommendation is no more than 200 milligrams per day. So that's equivalent of roughly about one medium-sized coffee. And then the suggestions are also to reduce alcohol intake, but in my opinion, I would just completely remove it if you're trying to conceive, especially if you're over 40. It can block the body's ability to absorb nutrients. It's a stimulant, which affects our adrenals. I would just remove it. And instead of coffee and alcohol, drinking more water. So hydration is always, obviously, we know, drink more water for pretty much everything, but it's true, especially with fertility, for many reasons. Even if you think about so one of the key factors in fertility is cervical fluid. So we need cervical fluid to help carry the sperm to the egg. And as we age, our cervical fluid decreases. And cervical fluid is 90% water, so that we can help our bodies by drinking more and creating more cervical fluid. Also, sort of really getting the right kind of, going back to the idea of quality, the right kind of protein, carbohydrate, and fat sources. So, for example, when we're talking about protein, quality-wise, choosing meats that are, again, organic, grass-fed, free-range, treated without antibiotics and other hormones. So avoiding conventionally raised chickens, that kind of thing. And it's also not just the quality, but the type of protein. So there are studies that show vegetable protein is more beneficial for fertility. So it's interesting, during the fertility phase, it's recommended to eat more plant-based proteins and limit meat-based protein. But then once you're pregnant, it's actually better to switch and eat more meat. So I would suggest, if you are a meat eater, just to maybe limit the number of days that you eat animal meat, and also kind of thinking about what you're choosing. So if you're eating fish, lower mercury fish, again, ideally wild caught fish. If you're eating meat, maybe focusing on poultry versus red meat would be a good idea. And in terms of carbohydrates, sorry, I saw that you had a question. Did you have a question?
I think my sense is you could talk about this for hours, which is great. And that's one of the things that you do with your clients. What occurs to me is, and where does gluten and dairy fit into this?
Okay. So, it's a tricky one because it's a perfect example of how not every body is different. Some people are completely fine with both, but if we look at the averages in population, gluten and dairy have been shown to create some levels of inflammation in the body. And when we're talking about fertility, inflammation is very bad. So there's a lot of controversy about dairy, for example. There's a verdict on both sides, but I would side on the air of caution and only consume it in very small amounts, and only consume full fat dairy. So there are studies that show that low fat dairy produces products are associated with decreased fertility, or specifically in ovulation. So so maybe opting for healthier dairy options like goat or sheep milk. And if you are drinking dairy, like staying away from actual like cow milk and cow cream. So opting more for like those fermented milks. When it comes to gluten, again, kind of there are pros and cons, but it also can be very inflammatory in a lot of people, which can throw your hormones off when you're trying to get pregnant. And I say can be because, again, it depends on the person. But if of all the gluten grains, because there are a few, not just wheat, but wheat tends to be the biggest problem for a lot of people when it comes to inflammation. So I'd recommend at least reducing the consumption of that grain. So you can moderate your wheat consumption by trying things like spelt or kamut or oats, or you can just try completely gluten-free grains like brown rice or quinoa. Like there's so many beautiful grains out there, and but our diet is so heavily loaded with wheat. So just kind of changing it up. But yeah, as a general rule, it will depend on the person, but if you react to it, take it out.
Good advice. And so as I'm listening to all the amazing advice that you've given so far, I'm thinking if someone is listening to this and they're a woman in their late 30s or early 40s and they go, oh my God, she's just said for me to change every single thing about my diet. Where do I start? Like just a short encouragement to somebody that could say, here's how you start, and don't be discouraged.
Sure. Great question. The answer is start where you are. So there's not a 5-step process to do all the right things. I think it is, you have a list of advice, list of things that are ideal to do. And then of that list, what will be most beneficial for you? For example, if you are someone who eats pastries all day, then going completely gluten-free or might be challenging, or going low carb is going to be challenging, versus if you don't really care about carbs anyway, so you're already there, then you can focus on a different recommendation. So it's start where you are, as in know all the things, like educate yourself on what are the things that you can do, and then make the choices, like start with the ones that are going to make the biggest impact on your life.
That's an excellent way to end this session, because this is a 2-part podcast. So on Fertility Over 40, and in the next session that we've got coming up, tips for women who have hormone imbalances, how they can use nutrition to rebalance, what supplements to take, some herbal remedies, lifestyle changes, nutritional strategies, etc. So stay tuned for part 2. And we'd love to see you there. If you want to see more about Eva Reid, please visit mindmyself.com and check out her profile and other podcasts and blogs that she has contributed to the site. Thank you for being with us today, and we will see you soon. Thank you, Eva.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us at the Mind Myself podcast today. We know that time is precious, and you've spent some of your valuable time with us. We're grateful. If you would like to reach out to our guest directly, the information is below. And if you would like more from Mind Myself, that information is also below. Please visit our website and check out all the information about the different complementary, holistic, and integrative healthcare approaches, information about health issues, more podcasts, tons of blogs, and we even have a community page for you where you could reach out and tell your story safely, or you could ask questions and perhaps somebody else in the world is going through something similar to you. In any case, we're so glad you're with us, and we're doing this because you matter.